Welcome to the Pursuit of Learning podcast. I'm your host, Clint Murphy. My goal is for each of us to grow personally, professionally, and financially, one conversation at a time. To do that, we will have conversations with subject matter experts across a variety of modalities. My job as your host will be to dig out those golden nuggets of wisdom that will facilitate our growth. Join me on this pursuit. Over 30 million Americans have quit their jobs this year. That is a staggering number, 30 million. As a leader, that's something I think we all want to see change. And that change starts by having friends in the workplace. Every Batman needs a Robin. Today I had the pleasure to talk to Morag Barrett about her book, You, Me, We, which teaches us how to create an ally mindset, which will increase happiness, incentivize collaboration, and improve business outcomes. Because for you and me to have a best friend at work, we need to be a best friend at work. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Good evening, Morag. Welcome to the Pursuit of Learning podcast. Where I'd love to start with you tonight is what's motivating you in life right now, and then we'll dive into what you want to make sure you get across to the audience that I cover.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with two answers to your question then, Clint. I'll go with personal and professional. Personal is just embracing life in full technicolor. So for me, it is living in the moment and being open to possibilities, which maybe sounds a little mysterious, but hey, it's where I am in life. And then professional has been, 2022 has been an amazing year. My team and I, my colleagues Eric and Ruby, and I are about to publish my third book, their first book, You, Me, We, which you can see over my shoulder there. And in fact, today, Clint, I'll let you into a secret. We got our secret, super secret stash of advanced copies. And so we got to open the box and actually feel it. So it's many years of hard work, but that's been our focus. There you go. Hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely does. And You, Me, We is what we're going to spend most of our time talking about tonight. And so where we can start in the book is early on when you're talking in the introduction, you talk about a phone call you received from a friend who wanted to BMW. And you realized you weren't stepping up and being your own ally and having the hard conversation with that friend that you needed to. So first, can you tell us what BMW is? Because it happens a lot in the workplace. And how was it impacting you and the importance of being the ally for yourself and your friend in having that hard conversation?
So let's start with, I think we've all been in this situation where the phone rings or you see the email come into your inbox and you're like, now what? You know, it isn't the yay, I can't wait to talk to you. It's the, no, now what? And that's what happened that time. My hand hesitated. And the reason was, this wasn't the first phone call from my friend. It was the nth phone call. And BMW is shorthand for bitch, moan and whine. And that's what she wanted to do. She wanted to bitch, moan and whine about this colleague and the circumstances she was finding herself in at work. And to be honest, it got to that point where I just didn't want to take the call. And that was the epiphany for me, because I was no longer serving her, certainly just listening to her go on and on about the situation and not helping her move through wasn't serving her. But the fact that I wasn't saying to her, you know, it's even impacting our relationship and our friendship, it's causing me to hesitate to pick up the phone. And that's not where I wanted to be. That too was the eye-opener. And the recognition that something needed to change on both sides of the relationship, not just with my friend.
And so that's one of the key things you talk about, right? Is because it's not just how is that friend showing up for us, but throughout the conversation, something I really picked up on is one of the first things has to be, how are we showing up as a friend for the person on the other side?
Yeah, so the book is called You, Me, We, Why We All Need a Friend at Work and How to Show Up as One. And the reason we called the book that was because for nearly 20 years, Gallup has been doing all of this research on engagement data. And of the 12 questions that they consistently ask, that if we can say yes or strongly agree in answer to, results in a more engaged workforce. And that in turn results in increased productivity, intent to stay, and good results at a business level and at a personal level all round. But one of their questions, question 10, has consistently received pushback and challenge from leaders. And I know myself, when I first read it, it was like, wow, this is ridiculous. And question 10 is, do I have a best friend at work? And I know in my first career, I spent 15 years in finance in the UK. The idea of having a friend at work was a real anathema, certainly in the 90s. The adage, it's not personal, it's just business, was how we showed up. You kept the two at arm's length. But my beef with the question 10 is that it is passive. It allows me to sit there and say, well, no, I don't have a best friend at work because Clint got the promotion I should have got. No, I don't have a best friend at work because Clint's team got the bonus or the budget for the project that I wanted to work on. So it makes us reactive. It makes us passive. It allows us to point the finger of blame. And so in You, Me, We, what my team and I are doing, what Eric Ruby and I did with our research from leaders around the world, is to turn it on its head and to say, if you want to have a best friend at work, you need to be a best friend at work. In other words, you need to go first, but not in a doormat, just become a yes person sort of way. It is also being an ally to ourselves and therefore being clear about the guardrails. What am I saying yes to, and what are the limits when I may need to either say no or renegotiate in order to ensure that we can be successful together?
And so when you look at that Gallup survey, what really blew me away, because it's the second book that I've read within the last few months that has had the statistic or statistics related to the benefit of having, I think in that situation, they reference 3 friends at work, and they highlight that you're 7 times more likely to be engaged in your job, 96% more likely to be extremely satisfied with your life. Not your workplace, but your life. And then cut it in half, your chance of dying of heart disease and so much more. So you hear those statistics and think, well, I want that. And so what I'm wondering, can you dive into, at a high level, how does the ally mindset help us establish those relationships, even while we're in COVID and we're working from home or we're in the office? And then what we'll do is we'll start to dive into the actual steps of the mindset.
Okay, so let's start with the research. Absolutely. The quality of our relationships have a huge impact on our success and our happiness, not just in the work environment, but in life. And you think about my friend and the story and anecdote I shared at the beginning about BMWing. We've all been there, whether we're working in an office in 3 dimensions or we're working in a hybrid environment, in a Zoom environment. We've all hung up on the Zoom call. We've all left the office and we've gone home to our significant other and we've done a version of BMW. And so when we don't have strong relationships at work, it bleeds into the rest of our lives. And that's why this is so important. You, Me, We is focused on how do we build those trusting relationships in the 9 to 5, if that still exists. But really the skills are applicable in all of the relationships in which we show up, whether it's friends, family, professional. And it's all about how do we work respectfully together in spite of our differences to ensure that you and me, and therefore we, can be successful. And one of the reasons I wrote You, Me, We, and it's the sequel to my first book, Cultivate the Power of Winning Relationships, is certainly in my finance career and in the rest of my corporate career, I saw far too much finger pointing and blame. It's easy to be a good colleague when everything is going well and you're hitting your targets and the project's on track and we're all getting our bonuses. Yay, it's fun. But the real test is what happens when we have something like a pandemic that turns the world upside down and gives it a good damn shake. Are we then in a position to adapt how we work? Do we have that trust of who's got my back? Are we willing to give the benefit of the doubt when we're asking people to now work remotely on maybe a rickety kitchen table and without full access to all of the equipment that I had in the office? Or am I immediately being labelled and typecast as unreliable, but no context is being given to the shifting landscape of work? So you, me, we is timely. We had an epidemic of loneliness happening before the pandemic. And as you pointed out, when we all then did the emergency evacuation and started working from home, all that has done is exacerbate that sense of isolation, the disconnect from the team. And it's those poor leaders that haven't been investing in how business gets done who are now suffering the consequences with the Great Resignation, quiet quitting, and all of the other buzzwords that seem to be emerging right now.
Yeah, it felt like the COVID was a bit of a wake-up call for leadership and isolation. And as I read your book, it really hit me how much of that would have been such an important playbook for leaders as we went into COVID and realized, what conversations do we need to be having with people on our team who are in such hard situations, and they're working more hours in general than they were when they're in the office. There's a blurring between the workplace and the home, and they have no connection. So how do we build that through the questions we're asking and the conversations we're having? So I really appreciated that, as you said, so timely relative to what we're dealing with right now. And one of the things that jumped out at me, and I believe this is from your first book, and it drives to, so we're focused, it's your 2x2 matrix. And we're focused on the ally quadrant, but there are multiple quadrants. And what I saw was that one of the axes is me to we.
Yes.
And the other axis is unconditional to conditional, and that's our intrapersonal micro level of relationships, I think is how you refer to it. Can you take our listeners through how those axes work and where we end up when we're in the ally mindset, which is where we're going to take people through in the steps?
Well, if I may, Clint, I'll do that in two parts. So first of all, I'm going to ask everybody listening or watching this episode to think about somebody you would jump at the chance to work with again. And I'll challenge you, Clint, because we'll do it out loud for the people who are listening. Think about somebody you would jump at the chance to work with again. And who is it and what is it about them that brings them immediately to mind? What made them special? So tell me about your best colleague, best boss, whoever's come to mind for you.
I mean, I'm lucky it's probably 3 or 4 or 5 plus people who are on my team today. And I think it's because we have a culture where each of us really believes in each other. We have each other's back in all situations, not when it serves us well. And there's this ability to push each other, challenge each other, expect the best, and also be that level of compassion. We're on a finance team. We all tend to be quite quirky. Maybe I shouldn't say we're all quite quirky. I'm quirky. You're not all quirky. But there's a level of quirkiness to the team, but we all appreciate that about each other. And so it's maybe the right way to say it is we can all be ourselves and perform at our highest. And yeah, it's why I love going to work. I love spending time with these people.
Okay, so I have asked that question of thousands of leaders from around the world. At last count, 20 countries, 4 continents. And invariably, the answers are very similar. But what you'll notice, if you think about the people that have jumped to mind to you, whether it's 1, whether it's 3, whether it's 5 people, is it's rarely about how smart the person was. It is rarely about their technical competence. Those are the table stakes that get you a seat at the table or get you a job on the team. But what we all remember is how you made us feel. And that isn't just that you were our cheerleader and celebrated success and had my back when I was making a mistake or I needed to pull an all-nighter. It's the fact that you also gave me the kick in the pants, the tough love, that you maybe saw potential in me that I didn't see in myself, took a risk on me, allowed me to take that project or the promotion. And that's what makes the difference between those go-to colleagues and the go-from colleagues. So that's part 1 of my answer. And here is my final challenge on that little point for everybody listening is whoever you just thought of, and you can do this after our conversation, Clint, I dare you, I want you to send them a LinkedIn message, a text message, an email, a message to the universe if they've passed on, that says, hey, I was listening to Clint and Morag talk on the podcast, The Pursuit of Learning. They were asking me to think about colleagues I would jump at the chance to work with, and I thought of you, and here's why. And I guarantee that no matter what, you're going to get replies. I get goosebumps every time I do it. When I'm doing a keynote or a leadership program, I will ask leaders to do this. And as the answers and replies come in, we will pause and read them out. And it is a powerful way of connecting with a relationship that might have gone dormant. It is a powerful way of kindling and strengthening a relationship with somebody you may work with today. However, going back to the second part of your question, or the second part of my answer to your question, which is the relationship ecosystem, which I introduced in my first book, Cultivate the Power of Winning Relationships. If we go back to the silos, politics, turf wars that I've seen in too much of my finance career, the reason I wrote Cultivate was to provide a language and framework that allowed us to work together on the same company brand versus slowing us down and having the infighting that stops us making good decisions and being fast to market. And the relationship ecosystem introduces 4 relationship dynamics. And you described those 2 axes. The horizontal axis is from me to we. The vertical axis from the bottom is conditional. And then the top of that is unconditional. And the go-to colleagues that you're all thinking about are the unconditional, we-focused, what I describe as ally relationships. They're the people who are not just there for you on the good days with the benefit of the doubt, the warnings of impending disaster, the feedback you need to hear. They're also there on the tough times. They're going to walk with you. They're the people you celebrate success with, and also the first person you go to when you're, oops, I've dropped the ball, and you know it's not going to be gossiped about and go on the grapevine. Now, as I move around, so that's the upper right-hand quadrant of the relationship ecosystem. But if I move around in a clockwise manner, then the we focus but conditional is a supporter. And I liken them to fair weather friends. They're fun to work with for sure, but they're going to give you the feedback you want to hear versus the feedback you need to hear. And the true test of a supporter is when the going gets tough. Unlike an ally who steps up with you, with a supporter, it's crickets. They're not going to put their head over the parapet and take risk for you.
So it's a bit more of a bandwagon supporter.
Yes.
They jump on the bandwagon when the times are good, cheer for the home team.
Absolutely.
And then as soon as you're down on the pitch, they're out of the stadium grabbing a beer.
Exactly. And we've all had those situations and we've all had those relationships. And often my healthcare clients will bring me in and they'll say, oh, well, one of the things we love about our culture is that we are family focused. We are, collegiate culture. The thing is, though, the reason they've brought us in is they're not having the tough conversations. They're not having the candor and feedback that they need. There isn't the accountability between individuals and teams that you get with an ally. All you get is nice, and nice is not enough in the current working environment to remain nimble, to be creative and innovative, to respond to a pandemic, to respond to challenges that we might be facing in the economy. Then if we keep on moving round to the dark side of the relationship ecosystem, you have rivals. So there it's a me focus, because we're now on the left-hand side of the model, and conditional. And I liken this one to Jekyll and Hyde. So Jekyll and Hyde, when it suits them, they're all for you. And when it doesn't suit their agenda, they're against you. So let's imagine for a moment, Clint, you're about to go into a meeting with a rival. Your hand is we'll do it in 3 dimensions. Your hand is on the door handle. You're about to walk into the meeting room. What are you thinking and feeling? Certainly, what are you thinking? But what are you thinking and feeling as you're about to go into that meeting with the rival, Clint?
Yeah, even as you talk about it, the feeling that I would otherwise label as anxiety in the middle of my chest is tightening, and I don't want to go in there. I'm thinking, how are they going to screw me today? I better be careful about what I say because they're going to twist it. And just all the negative things you have with that, it almost reminds you of that high school bully who you have to be very, very careful around mentally, physically, emotionally. It's just draining.
It is draining. And it was funny watching you as we're talking here, and you'd put your hand over your chest, that tightening of your heart. You might be getting nervous. And in the short term, a rival might actually help us raise our game, because invariably we'll prepare and practice and re-prepare and check our numbers and so on. but it's not sustainable. It's not done with the intent of us both learning and growing, shared understanding. It is done as a win-lose, get in, get out, and do I survive? And what we're not focused on, because it is all about, I don't want to be here. What are they going to do first? If they say this, I'm going to do that. Maybe I should say the first thing and take control. We're not focused on the business decision at hand. And even you said, you're careful around them. We filter the information. And of course, if we're filtering information, it's slowing down information flow within the company and it's undermining the quality of the decisions that we can make. So that's the risk of arrival. And then finally, the fourth quadrant within the relationship ecosystem is the adversary, unconditional me. At best, a brilliant jerk, and at worst, just a jerk. All you know is that relationship is consistently toxic. But here's what I've learned in my career and from all of the research and the interviews that we've conducted for Cultivate and for You, Me, We is very few, less than 1%. Nobody gets up in the morning with the intent of, well, I hope I can be seen as an adversary today. I hope I can really mess with Clint's day and undermine his success. Won't that be fun? Now, and so often when we actually look at those toxic and tough relationships, whether they're rivals or adversaries, sometimes it can be a difference in style and approach. Sometimes it can be misaligned goals and expectations that have come from other parts of the business. Invariably, it's because we've not sat down and said, hey, Clint, what's your number one priority? What are your team being tasked to do? Do you have the skills, the resources you need? Here's what's been asked of me and my team. Where are they aligned? Where are they disconnected? And now as leaders, how do we navigate through this? And that was the power of the relationship ecosystem. It literally transformed individual leader relationships. I've seen it transform teams and I've seen it transform organizational cultures, helping people to get on the same side, to recognize that people aren't intentionally being a jerk. And if they're not intentionally being a jerk, then what's my culpable negligence? But also what's the conversation that we need to have in order to move forward in spite of our differences? And point of clarity, it doesn't mean that we're best friends forever, that you have to come home and meet my mother, that we're going to go for drinks after work every day. We can still not like each other socially, but we have to be able to work together respectfully in the day job to ensure that we're meeting our client and customer needs and business goals. So that's the relationship ecosystem.
And otherwise, we're jeopardizing not only our relationship, but our career, their career, the company.
Absolutely.
And that's not good for anyone.
Because if you think about it, if you're anything but an ally, if you're being an average vanilla, okay, safe supporter, if you're elbow jockeying and some bruises with a rival, or if you're going head to head as an adversary, at some point, an organization is going to have to make a choice. Do we keep Morag or do we let her go? And just because I might be hitting it out of the ballpark and achieving great results, if it's with the equivalent of clean up on aisle 13 and dead bodies and damaged relationships all around, at some point, my reputation is going to be impacted. And if that continues to be tolerated, then the reputation of the leaders, whether it's HR, whether it's my peers, whether it's the big bosses, the mysterious they that exists in every company, their reputation is going to be undermined when we allow anything but ally mindset behaviors to proliferate within an organization or a team.
All right, let's dive into the first step. But before we do, there's one concept that I love that you introduce at the end of every chapter, and I know you'll probably end up referencing it throughout our conversation. So, and that's your concept of look up, show up, and step up. So do you want to fill the listeners in on what you mean by those three things? And occasionally you'll probably throw a look up or a step up or a show up at them, and then they'll be ready.
Well, so the good news is you've already done step one, look up. So look up is being present and thinking about how do I want others to feel in my presence? How do I feel in my own presence? Because again, part of being an ally is, am I an ally to myself? And so when I asked you to think about the great leaders, the people you would jump up at a chance to work with again, that is a tactic for look up, knowing what good looks like for you. Because then the reciprocal question is, if I were to ask the people who work with and for you as listeners to this podcast, would you make it onto their list? And if you're unsure if the answer's no, then are you ready and willing to show up and step up differently to change that outcome? Because your very success depends on it. So look up is around, how do others feel in my presence? How do I feel in my own? Show up is being intentional. What do I need to be and how do I need to show up in this relationship, in this meeting for this colleague? So for example, I'm an introverted extrovert. I am a chatty soul. It would not do us, you and me, Clint's, any good for me to turn up as the reflective, thoughtful Morag, the quiet Morag, where you're pulling teeth to have an engaging conversation. You need the slightly perky, energetic, hey, let's have a conversation about the importance of relationships and friendships at work. And as leaders, we often aren't being thoughtful and deliberate about how we need to show up. Do I need to be more directive and telling my team what to do? Or do I need to be asking more questions and channeling curiosity? Am I coaching them or am I directing them?
Quick interjection on that one, because you raise a really good point when you say you're an extrovert or an introverted extrovert. And so you specifically say, I'm going to choose to show up as a chatty, energetic person for this specific situation that I'm in at the moment. But I may finish that and then need to go relax and watch TV or have a glass of wine or read a book because I used my energy in that situation in a way that normally might not be my way, but it's what the situation called for.
Yeah, so that would be a good example. I mean, again, from the accent people have gathered, I'm not from the US. I live in Colorado now, but I'm English. And I embrace the stereotype of a British woman. Tight up, stiff upper lip, walk it off, nothing to see here. And early in my career, and I talk about it in both books, I kept work and home life very separate. But what I've learned is, and so this is where I need to make a choice, is that sharing my personal journey, sharing my vulnerability and the mistakes that I've made, sharing when I don't know the answer and asking for help actually strengthens relationships and trust in me than what I did do earlier in my career, which is to try and pretend I had it all together and understood what I was doing. And so that's how the look up, show up, step up really connects, because look up is, am I being who I need to be? Am I having fun at work? Are people having fun working with me? Show up. How do I need to turn the dial up or down? Because I still need to be the authentic version of Morag. I'm not going to do a 180, but I need to practice enjoying silence. If I'm working with the executives as an executive coach, as I do regularly, it isn't about Morag being chatty. It's about Morag asking deep questions and then zipping it and being comfortable with the silence as the leader I'm coaching processes the question, thinks about their answer, sifts through what they want to share, chooses to speak and actually articulate their response. And as the facilitator, Morag, I am a quick thinker and I can fill the gap, but I have to be conscious and deliberate, in that case, of embracing silence. And the third step then is step up, which is all about, did I actually do it? So I might go into the meeting thinking, okay, I need to channel open questions and embracing silence. Step up is the reflection of, did I do it? And did I do it to the best of I could? Because we're not perfect. I've written 2 books on this topic. I am not perfect. But at the end of the day, it is literally that, the end of the day. Forgive myself, learn from it, and tomorrow I have a whole new opportunity to start again and reset expectations up to and including an apology for what I may have done before if needed, but owning it versus the victim pointing and blame of course I don't have a best friend at work. Clint made me interrupt him, and all of the other BS that we tell ourselves that allow us to continue on the one size fits all, but ultimately one size deserves us all. I just made that last word up, I think.
I get it, though. I get it. It was a good choice of words, a good word to make up in that situation. So the first step in moving from that from me to we is holding a perspective of abundance, which is something we tend to talk about a lot on the Pursuit of Learning podcast. Can you share with our listeners, what is your view of abundance? And then we can spend some time talking about abundance before we jump on to generosity. And I will note that even though we say 5 steps, There are somewhat 10 because every step has 2 areas. So
they're double-barreled.
Yeah, I did love the double-barreled steps. That was well played.
Thank you. I'll take it as well played. It's one of those, it's 5 practices, and we call them practices because it is about a daily habit, an in-the-moment habit. And we are always learning and growing. And the reason for You, Me, We was Cultivate was a huge success. People loved the relationship ecosystem, but we kept getting asked, and yes, how do I show up as an ally? What does that actually mean? And how do I do that when others are pressing my buttons? How do I do that without becoming the yes person and the doormat? Which is the genesis for the ally mindset and the ally mindset profile. And in fact, Clint, for everybody who's listening, I have an offer. If you go to skyeteam.cloud, that's SKYE, team.cloud, CLOUD, /You, Me, We, you will be able to take the complimentary ally mindset profile and get your own individual report around the 5 practices, the 10 elements that we're about to talk about. But the foundation is abundance and generosity, and they're all about being and doing. And abundance, for me, we live in a world where scarcity seems to drive behavior. I mean, you even touched on it briefly when we were talking about rivals. You started to hold back on the information. You were being careful about what you said. That's a scarcity mindset, that if I give everything that I have, if I am generous with and abundant with everything I bring to the table, then there's going to be a risk. And so in order to have an ally mindset, we need to look at success in a different way. If we look at it as an abundant resource, then we are more likely and willing to give of our experiences and expertise. And Dory Clark wrote about this in her Long Game, the book, The Long Game. Simon Sinek has touched on this in The Infinite Game. But when we can change our mindset to think about longer term and that there is more than enough success to go around, now there might only be one CEO role in this company, but there are many CEO roles that we could all aspire to in other organizations. That changes the rules of engagement. But if we're starting from a perspective of scarcity, then it becomes me first. It becomes all about me winning and me hoarding budget and people and talent, and knowledge is power, versus abundance, which is about opening up, and it's about we first. And if you're successful, then I celebrate you. If I'm successful, hopefully you're celebrating me, but ultimately it's the rising tide that raises all boats.
And that was a bit of the key there at the end, right? The rising tide raises all boats. I don't need you to lose for me to win. If you win, I win. If I win, you win. If one of us wins, we all win. And ideally, we all win together. Why do you think people end up in a mindset of scarcity versus abundance? And how can someone make that shift from scarcity to abundance?
Great question. So why do we end up there? Well, think about our schooling system. I am familiar with what happens in England because I went through it and my boys started there. I'm familiar with what happens in America because my boys have gone through that system. And I can only assume it's similar in Canada, but it's a me first approach. It's me versus the exam board. It's me and can I graduate in the top 5% of my class? It is me, me, me. And in fact, if we collaborate, if we endeavor to do teamwork, it is often labeled as cheating. And then we're thrown out into the workplace, which is the ultimate team sport, because no one, even as a solopreneur, when I first started SkyTeam 17 years ago, my success was still dependent as a solopreneur back then on the quality of the relationships with my clients, with the alumni from the corporate career I had who might come to me or refer me, to my vendors and partners that I was bringing into projects who were supporting me. Our success is interconnected. And when we don't make that shift, when we continue with the me first, that's when we see subpar performance in our careers and we end up getting frustrated on all sides. So how do we make the shift? Well, one of them, it is a choice. I was talking with a colleague of mine, Charlene Wheelers, and she has 3 leadership tenets that she lives by. And one of them is choice, not chance. And it goes back to the intentionality of how do I need to show up? And if I am a generous go first person, again, with guardrails, because we've all said yes, generosity. I mean, you're going to ask me about this in a moment, but I'll preempt it. We've all volunteered and said, of course, I'll help organise this. Of course, I'll take on this extra project. Of course. And we're smiling. And then we're later on working at late at night, gritting our teeth, going, what the heck was I saying yes for? How dare they? Righteous indignation of, you're taking advantage of me. But I never actually tell you that. And all you know is I'm a bit prickly next time I see you. And you're thinking, well, Morag's a bit prickly. What's up with her? Well, I'm going to be more careful around her. And before you know it, the divide, my prickliness gets worse because it's like, now, see, even Clint doesn't even want to hang out with me. And I went all that extra mile for him on that project. And so it just gets into this downward spiral that causes us to move further apart. But when we go with abundance and generosity, it's, of course, I'd love to help you with that, Clint. I can't help this week, but I can do it next week. Or, yes, Clint, I'd love to help you on this. However, I'll need to prioritize some of my other projects. Can you help me do that? Or here's what I plan to defer in order to free up the time to get you your stuff by this week and this deadline. Now we're all on the same page. And it stops the resentment and it stops that degradation and the gap forming. Instead, it brings us closer together.
The abundance is the mindset of how we view the world and how we ought to behave. The generosity is actually doing it.
Yes.
So almost if we do, the abundance is how we want to show up.
Yes.
Generosity is stepping up.
Yes. And if you think about it, you can do that with all the others. The next one's connection and compassion. If you don't believe that relationships are important to your success, you're not even going to create your LinkedIn list. You're not going to ask, how are you doing? And then the compassion piece is not just, and what can you get from the people in your network? It's, do you care about the people in your network? And if you can connect with compassion, then abundance and generosity, maybe you've said yes to something, but your circumstances have changed. When you then come and say, actually, Morag, I can't, or I need to adjust the timeline, I am going to listen with empathy and compassion. And even if the deadline can't move, what resources can I provide to support you? Or what other resources can I bring on? What can I do to ensure that the project is still on track? Because you need me today. And I can guarantee that I'm going to need you in a week, in a month, in a year. So it is reciprocal.
And what I appreciated, Morag, is when we work through the steps, the first 3 steps are very kind and compassionate and empathetic. And then we get to the last 2, and they still are in that realm, but that's where you have the guardrails, the bumper rails. Hey, even though we're being loving and compassionate and abundant, we have to get things done. And we have to be accountable for our work. So it's like you said, it can't just be, we can't be run over and walked over. There has to be that other side. And so our listeners will hear that as we get there. So you already hinted, when it comes to the next step, when it comes to connection, I want to share a quote from one of our recent guests that was in your book, Michelle Tillis-Letterman, as I mentioned just before we came on air. And so she said, show your people you care about them as people and that you care about the things they care about. The result is engagement, loyalty, productivity, retention, and a better bottom line, which I think we all probably want. So can you share with us, Morag, what that means to you, and how do we improve our connections as leaders? How do we actually do those things that Michelle was saying?
So I love Michelle Tillis-Letterman, and I do quote her in You, Me, We. And I love her books, recommend them. So the 11 Laws of Likeability and the Connector's Advantage are just 2 of the books she's written. And we all both talk about the passion of relationships at work. Now, there's a prime example. She and I will get on the phone and mentor each other. We've both spoken at the same event. If you don't have abundance and generosity, it might be, well, I can't tell her because she will steal my clients. She's going to win and I'm going to lose, as opposed to, no, she brings a different perspective and a lens to the same topic that I do. And you know what? 1 + 1 makes 3, and we are a powerful combination. So even that relationship with Michelle, I would say would be a great example of ally mindset and you, me, we. So in you, me, we, I talk about 4 questions that we are always asking ourselves in every interaction. Your audience is listening to you and asking these questions about me right now. They're asking it about every guest, every single podcast episode. We're asking it about our colleagues every single day. Question number 1 is, can I count on you? I.e., will you do what you say you're going to do and get me your stuff on time so I can get my stuff done? Transactional, reactional, do your job. That's it. Question number 2 is, can I depend on you? So that's the proactive. Instead of just doing what I asked for and giving it to me right or wrong, depend on you is the proactive, discretionary effort, go the extra mile to spot the error in the formula in the spreadsheet on tab 53, cell 633B, whatever, and fix it. Or the typo on the PowerPoint and fix it. Or to say, hey, Morag, I know you're about to go on Clint's podcast. Here are some tips for helping you to have a successful conversation. And those 2 questions, can I count on you? Can I depend on you? Transactional, you do your job, I do mine, and we'll be okay. But okay is not enough in the modern world. Okay was what I saw in my finance career, which is why many of the businesses were unsuccessful. Instead, you need to focus on questions 3 and 4. Question number 3 is, do I care about you? Not in a group hug, trust fall sort of way, but do I care as you as a human being? And question number 4 is, do I trust you? And those are the interpersonal skills that truly transform individual and team performance. Because if you can get a yes to those 2, anything is possible. And I think about Michelle Tillis-Lederman and my relationship with her. I would say I'm a 4 yeses. I think about Eric and Ruby at Sky Team. The 3 of us are 4 yeses to the core. And what that means is we still compete with each other, but we have fun doing it. We compete to raise the bar for each other, to challenge and grow together, versus to win and knock each other down, which is our experience in other corporate environments. So how do you do it? 1 conversation at a time. And here's a simple technique. We use it at Sky Team. Many of our clients have started to use it. I call it ripples and joys. And every staff meeting, remember, there's only 4 of us at Sky Team because we also have Jose, who's our program manager. But every meeting we met today and we started with ripples and joys. And when we started it, I thought, this is the hokiest thing ever. I've no idea what I'm going to say. This is not going to last. We've been doing this now for nearly 5 years. And we would not have weathered the pandemic as successfully but for this activity. And it takes just 5 minutes. And it literally is, before we get into the what needs to get done, the meeting agenda, it's tell us something, a ripple, something that you've had a success at that's had an impact for the customer. Maybe it's something we've done for each other. A ripple effect, something we've done. And then joy, something personal or professional that has brought a smile to your face. So for me this week, the ripple is, oh my goodness, the book is real. Because look, I've got 4 boxes of them. The advanced copies have arrived. That's the ripple. It's a me ripple, but hey, we've been living and breathing this book for 2 years. The joy was I checked off something off my life list, my bucket list. I took a hot air balloon flight on Monday. I'd never done it. I suffer from vertigo, didn't have it in the balloon. It was amazing. It was just an amazing experience. So there you go, ripples and joys. And what that's done for you and the listeners is you've now connected. You understand what's important to me when it comes to work things. And you've learned a little nugget about me on the human side. And it took no time at all. Sending the message that I sent earlier, challenged you all to do earlier on to the go-to colleague. That is a joy, because trust me, when you get those replies, it will be a joy for you and them and everybody you tell that, hey, I thought it was hokey, but I sent the message and here's what they said. And oh my goodness, that's how you build, do I care about you? That's how you build trust. That's how you build the sense of connection that at a human level is the connection and compassion. So Clint, what would be your ripple and joy this week?
Oh, that's a great one. So the ripple would probably be, we got approval a day or so ago to hire a person on the team, and a couple of the people on my team are pretty stressed right now and stretched, and I felt probably pretty down that I didn't pick up on it soon enough. So getting approval to get that person who's going to come in and lift some of the load and have a light at the end of the tunnel for them felt like a great thing for us to do. And then the joy, I think the joy would probably be, and it's one of the reasons I love doing it, is very specific dog park close to here that's off leash. And so the dog, like I still call her a puppy. She's a year and a half.
And what is she? What sort of dog is she in?
She's a Bernedoodle.
So cute. What's her name?
So half Bernese Mountain, Stella. And so Stella she goes off leash and she runs ahead and smells stuff and runs back, hangs out behind and catches up. And she's just free. And then, sniffs every dog in the park. And, it's just like, usually it tends to be my youngest son who also loves it, my wife and me, and we'll do a 5K walk. And she just has a blast. And so that was just so joyful.
So see, for everybody listening, here we've learned nuggets. Dog lover, has a Bernese doodle, and we could feel the passion as you talked about her running free. We know you have at least one son because you've just mentioned him and so on. And that's how you start to get connections beyond just the job title and the project at hand. And you also start to learn about possibly untapped talents. I mean, I've already mentioned my finance career. If I hadn't mentioned that, you would have assumed I'm an author and a leadership expert. I'm a people person, but you wouldn't know that I'm also pretty good at numbers and understanding what it takes to run a profitable business. So that took us 3 minutes. You could do that quickly at the beginning of each of your meetings. If you're listening to it, try it. But try it for 4 or 5 weeks, because I think you'll find it becomes a habit. And you will learn things about your colleagues that you didn't otherwise know that allow you to come together on the good days, but means that you're tighter together to weather the storms that invariably are going to hit all of us at some point.
And you nailed it. I picked up on that finance background. And as a finance person, as a CFO by day, I love to hear transition stories. So that's something I was definitely intending to pick your brain on it at some point. Was that transition from the finance side to the people and the leadership and the writing about what you write about and coaching and what you do with what you do. It's definitely always interesting to see people make that transition. So while we were talking in there, you demonstrated a level of compassion and you talked about it, but we did focus a little bit more on the connection side. When it comes to the compassion, how does that play into the connection? And what are some ways that people can increase their compassion in the workplace as leaders?
Well, you touched on it when you talked about your team and the stress and anxiety that, let's face it, we've all felt in the last 2 years. And you wished you'd picked up on it sooner. Well, another simple tactic, I've used it with others. If you're on a Zoom meeting, everybody can type in, what emotions have you or your friends at work, the usual, not me, but my friends have. What emotions have you or your friends at work experienced in the last 2 weeks? Just type them into chat for me. And it'll be interesting, or we'll do a word cloud. I have software that will do that and we'll see it build. And, invariably you'll see themes. And it happened with an executive team I was working with, and somebody had put in overwhelmed. Now, we didn't talk about it in the meeting, but I rang her afterwards and I said, tell me about overwhelmed. And she said, well, first off, thank you for that activity, because somebody else also wrote it. And so for her, it was an epiphany that it wasn't just her. At the moment, she was working at home, feeling overwhelmed. The story she was telling herself was, I'm a failure. I'm the only one. Everybody else has it good altogether. Look at them on their Zoom. They know what they're doing. It must be just me. I'm broken. Well, when we did it and we all shared the emotions, she wasn't alone. Now, does it mean the pressure went away? No, but she felt seen and heard. And then it allowed for a conversation afterwards. And with that team, now a habit of, so what do you need? What's your ask of? This is where courage and vulnerability comes in, and candor and debate. What is it you need? Which is, you know what? I just need to take Friday afternoon off. I am spent. I cannot do another hour, and I'm going to make it up on Monday or on Sunday or, whatever. But when we try to just weather through, we lose the compassion, but we also lose the candor that gives us the warnings that Morag's about to drop the ball because she's stressed and she's burning the candle at both ends.
And so you talked about what the next step will be as you were saying that. And it's so timely as you talked about that person who's running through that emotion. And as we look at COVID, one of the things we've talked about a fair amount on the podcast is that isolation equals amplification. And so there were so many people that were suffering from things they'd never experienced during this last 2.5 years. And really brought mental health and mental health challenges to the forefront. And part of that is having that courage to say to people on your team, whether it's on a Zoom call or in person, hey, if you're experiencing this or this or this, feel free to talk to me. Here's what I've personally gone through, which is the second half of it, is the vulnerability to say, here's the mental health challenges I'm experiencing the last 2 years. And, if you're experiencing anything along these lines, feel free to have a chat with me and you'll be chatting with someone who's in the same boat as you. So can you share more on courage and vulnerability, and why do they play such an important part in being that ally for people? And how do we, when we're not used to it?
Oh, and trust me, I wasn't used to it. I'm still not used to it, but I'm getting better at it. I mean, this goes back to the ally mindset profile, which again was skyteam.cloud/you, me, we. When I take the profile, courage and vulnerability actually is one of my lowest scoring areas, because I have high courage when it comes to being an entrepreneur, taking business risks, but I have low vulnerability when it comes to telling stories about me, but also when it comes to tough conversations, which is the next one, Candor and Debate, and giving tough feedback to others. And so it is different for all of us, but again, we can learn to adjust. And Eric talks candidly in You, Me, We about his own depression. And when he first shared that he suffered from depression with Ruby and I, and he thought we would reject him, that he would get fired. And it was quite the opposite. But if you think about it, and Brene Brown has spent so much time researching shame, but also talking extensively about courage and vulnerability, you don't have one without the other. Because even showing up as an ally for somebody, even setting expectations of what does it mean to be a colleague of mine, to be on my team, to be on your team as a direct report, having those conversations take courage and vulnerability. And then there is always a risk that it isn't going to be reciprocated. And in Cultivate, I talk about telling somebody, if you are their ally, truly are their ally, their best friend at work, you have their back. Don't leave it implicit, make it explicit, tell them. But in telling somebody, hey, Clint, I am your ally, it can be akin to, hey, Clint, I love you. And of course, we know from the movies that if somebody says, I love you, you're supposed to say it back. But being an ally is a choice of how I show up in the world. It is a choice for how I want to live my life. And it is independent of what you choose to give back to me. Now, if I'm in an environment where continually what's given back to me is rival or adversary, then I need to be an ally for myself and find a different pond to swim in where I can thrive, where I can be my authentic self. But unless we can be that, the ally for ourselves, unless we've given you the chance to step up, because this isn't rocket science, to meet me where I'm at as to how can you help me to be successful and vice versa, then we are always going to be stuck in our little spirals, never quite reaching our potential together.
Something you said as you were going through there put a giant light bulb off in my head, and I'd never thought of it that way, is the concept of metta or loving kindness when you look at meditation. And at work, we now have a meditation club, which is always fun. Thursday afternoons at lunch, we get together and have a meditation. And we were doing a loving kindness meditation last week. And somewhere in there, you're saying, may you be well, may you be safe, may you be loved, may you be happy, may you be healthy. And then at some point we say, okay, now picture in your mind everybody in this building, everybody on this floor. And so you are almost saying, I love you all. Like, may you be well, may you be safe. And it makes sense while doing the meditation. But nowhere would it make sense when I'm in the hallway to just say to the next colleague that walks by, may you be well, may you be safe, may you be happy, healthy, and loved today. But I think what I'm hearing is, why not? Why not tell them that?
Well, why not tell them that? Why not ask them? But you can ask it in business speak, which is, how are you doing? Which unfortunately is, I see you, and heaven forbid that you should say, actually, I'm glad you asked, and oh my goodness, the world's falling in. So it is asking the question in the appropriate way, which is what's working well for you right now? I mean, you ask again, how can leaders do it? Ask in your next one-to-one these 3 questions. What's working? What's not working? And what's one thing I can do to help you or us succeed? Now, It can be what's working about working virtually in terms of this Zoom world. We thought it was going to be 2 weeks, and lo and behold, 2.5 years later, and we haven't really adjusted how we do work or systems. So let's take a moment now, Clint, to reflect. What's working? What are you enjoying it? Oh, you don't have to commute. You've got more time with the family. Yeah. Great. Now, what's not working? Well, I still can't get the VPN access and I've got a rickety table. Okay, so what's one thing I could do? Well, I'd love better lights or a better microphone. Or I'd love to be able to take a lunchtime break. Well, now as a boss, I can say, well, make sure you schedule it. Make it happen. I can decide whether or not I'm going to be able to invest in the technology to help set you up for success. And even if the answer's no, I now know that I can explain to you, well, Clint, I would love to buy you a standing desk and here's why we can't do it now, but can I get you a manual riser to go on top of your desk? Would that be sufficient? Because if I don't ask, you're going to assume I don't care. If we're straight down to the what are you doing, Clint? Where's my project versus the how are you doing? Then going back to my 4 questions, do you care about me? Well, I've got no idea because all you focus on is the work. Do I trust you? Well, no, because the only time you call me is when you need something, not to see how I'm doing. So just by asking, even if the answer's no, you've got a better understanding. And now the other person's got a choice to keep being part of the team or not based on that shared understanding from that conversation.
In what you highlighted right there, the way you approached it, you're not just asking the question, which allows the other person on the other side to be seen and heard, but you're then acting on what they've said, which now means they've been listened to, which is taking it all the way to that third step of, oh, wow, he didn't just ask me how I'm feeling. He actually went away and bought me whether it's the manual or the automatic rising. He actually did something to impact my life. He must truly, truly care about me. That's taking it all the way the extra step. And so now we get to shift. So that was, and we alluded to coming to this shift earlier, and how I saw it was moving from the soft and open to the stronger side of the equation, which I think we can only access if we're taking the steps we've already discussed in advance. Because otherwise, if we go straight to this, we're just that jerk boss who no one wants to work with. But if we've demonstrated the abundance and generosity and the connection and the caring, then we can do this. So where that gets us to is candor and debate. And so can you share with us, what's your definition of candor and debate before we dive into each one of them?
Well, if you've ever sat in a meeting thinking to yourself, well, that'll never work, or what does that acronym stand for? Oh, well, I'll go and work it out later, but never actually said it. Or if you've been in a meeting where everybody's gone, oh, yeah, Clint, that's a great idea. And then at the water cooler, the proverbial water cooler later, everybody's going, well, that's stupid. Did you hear it? Then that is an example of candor and debate that isn't happening. So what does it mean? It means that we are able to speak our truth, even inelegantly, knowing that with the courage and vulnerability that it will be heard with the benefit of the doubt. Somebody else will help with the translation as needed. And that is what I mean. And candor and debate go hand in hand, because I've got to be willing to speak it, but that doesn't mean, and I'm role modeling it on the video, is lobbing a candor of grenade of, oh my goodness, no. It's being willing to be part of the conversation that follows the debate that helps others either to agree with my point of view or for me to learn that I'm looking at it from the wrong lens and for me to learn and adjust. So you can't have one without the other. I've got leadership teams I've worked with who are very good at debate, but not candor. They will admire the problem. They will talk about possible plans. I mean, this links to the next section too, but they don't actually talk about the real issues as to what was getting in the way of success. And I've also seen the other end of the scale where it's just like a toe-to-toe, knock-down, drag-out fight. Who can shout the loudest? But there isn't any listening going on. There is no debate. It is all about beating the chest and egos. Well, that's not candor and debate either, because invariably that infects the rest of the organization. The teams have to choose sides, and lo and behold, the silos and the divides get even bigger between the teams.
So 2 points that you talk about in the book that help us with both of these. One of them is discussing the undiscussables, which helps us cultivate allies. So we can tackle that. And maybe I'll save the second one for after we discuss that so that we don't forget it later.
Well, so the undiscussables then, I've learned in my work with leaders around the world, there's a whole menagerie, but it's the gorilla in the corner, it's the moose on the table. I understand that might be a Canadian, or maybe it's just Nevada.
I've heard that one.
Yeah, the stinky fish. And what else? There's 4. I've got 4 on my I've got a little icon. So you got the gorilla in the corner, moose on the table. Oh, well, stinky fish. But it's the topic that...
The elephant?
The elephant, there you go. The elephant in the room. Yeah, we've seen it. So we all know it's there, but nobody wants to acknowledge it. Well, Candor and Debate is let's call it for what it is, because immediately they reduce their size. And maybe we can't solve for it, but now we can at least agree how are we going to work around it together versus continually hitting our heads against it and getting frustrated. So that's the undiscussables, is being able to say.
And that's the candor.
That's the candor. And then the debate is how are we going to solve for it? Who owns it? Are we just going to live with it? Are we breeding them and having a whole menagerie? Or are we going to work on relocating them and reducing the risk that they're going to undermine success?
And so on the debate side, one of the things you said that was interesting, and I hadn't heard this before, so I really want your take on it. And for the listeners, is that healthy debate, and the secret to healthy debate and candor is shared understanding, not shared agreement.
Yes.
So what do we mean by that?
So this could be that you want a red car and I want a blue car, and you're going, and you and I, if our approach to debate is to go nose to nose and bang the table and what the heck, Clint? No, I want a blue one and you want a red one. We can still disagree, and maybe because I am the boss or I have the budget, I get the blue one. But at least you now feel heard that you wanted the red one and we didn't go there, and I'm saying, well, I'm getting a blue one because everybody knows blue cars go faster. But the thing is, we're not paying attention to the innocent bystanders in there. They might be thinking, oh my God, I hope Morag never disagrees with me. I'm not going to get in the crosshairs. And if we haven't done everything else that we've already talked about with the team, then chances are they're going to show up and be a little bit more cautious and filter the information, and we're back to square one. Supporter or rival relationships. So I think many times in teams, leaders will assume that consensus means that everybody has to say yes. And the answer is that is not true. Consensus means that everybody needs to have been heard, to have had an opportunity to air the elephant in the room, their yes, but, or that will never work, or we tried it in 1973, why would we do it again? Whatever their rationale is, but we agree to commit in the room. So we can dissent in private, but certainly at the senior leadership teams, when we leave, we have to be one voice to the rest of the organization. This is not the time where you get to go out of the room and say, well, I don't know what Clint's thinking, it's stupid, but he's told us we've got to do it, so we've got to do it. No, you go in and say, actually, Clint and I had a really heated debate about it, and we ended up on buying the blue car, and here's why. Because chances are others are sitting there thinking, well, why aren't we getting the red one? So tell them. You don't have to go into the blow-by-blow approach to how we came to that decision, but we need to say, yeah, we thought about the red, we thought about the green, but the blue one was, in the end, the right decision for us now, given time, cost, quality, budget. So you can still disagree, but you feel heard. You can get behind the decision. That means there's no passive-aggressive undermining of it that happens afterwards.
And as the leaders in the room, what we're making sure happens there is we have to hear everybody, but we don't have to listen to them. And I'll say it a little bit with more subtlety, and because I learned this one from a guest just a couple episodes ago, and what he meant was you may have people in the room and someone may say, well, legal says we have to do this. And you may say, okay, well, I hear that, but we in the room are going to make a decision that differs from that. So we've heard everyone's point, but if we all have different points, we can't have everyone in the answer.
No, so you can't have 10 different answers to the same question. And it does depend on seniority, and it does depend on the decision rights, because if legal have said you've got to do it, then invariably you've got to do it. Otherwise, your decision is on the borderline of being illegal. So here's the thing. If we're not clear, and this is the Candor and Debate, on roles and responsibilities, when we try to do decision-making by consensus, is it any wonder that egos get in the way, as opposed to, no, I've got the 5 of you in this room because I want your perspective and your input, because either Morag, you've spent 15 years in finance, so you've got a perspective to bring. Clint, you're coming from Canada, you understand that market, and I'm sitting here in Colorado. But ultimately, if you all can't decide, I'm going to call it. Or if we can't get to agreement together, I'm going to call it. And there is a great, I'm just looking on my bookshelf over here, there is a Harvard article called Who's Got the D? Which takes, I hate racy matrices, hate it, but rapid I do like, because the D stands for who holds the ultimate decision. And there's another book, Michael Roberto, Why Great Leaders Don't Take Yes for an Answer. And it's all about the decision-making process is almost as important, if not more important than the decision itself. Because if you're not clear on the decision-making process and who gets to make the decision, as opposed to have an opinion and a pontificate in the Candor and Debate piece, that's when you arrive with the passive-aggressive undermining or the back-channeling, or at worst, the everybody goes back and does nothing, and then 6 months later you're wondering why the project hasn't even started. So you have to be clear on decision-making, and that's everything we've been talking about.
Yeah, which is also one of the reasons never leave a meeting without a clear who, what, when, who's responsible, what are they doing, when is it due, send your minutes out that day. There's no way you're coming back in 6 months and someone says, well, I didn't know I was responsible for that. Well, you were assigned the D in the meeting.
Exactly. And that's the action and accountability.
Yeah, exactly. And
yeah, so action and accountability is the pinnacle because, again, we're all good at talking a good show. We're all kind of good at over-committing and then not wondering how we're going to fit it all in. I mean, I could show you my to-do list, which invariably is always a page long. So action and accountability is twofold. It's the, did I do what I said I was going to do, and how am I showing up? The, how do I want to feel in my presence? How do others feel in my presence? And how do we build peer accountability? So it isn't always the boss who is holding the team accountable. We should be holding each other for meeting the deadlines and moving the projects forward together.
Which is our fifth step of the mindset. I see how you snuck right into that one. So how do you contrast and define the difference between action and accountability?
So again, doing and being. Action is the doing, accountability is the being. How does it feel to be in my presence? And action is more of the transactional piece.
And with action, you talk about...
I'm opening the book myself since I now have a copy in front of me, which is so exciting.
Well, I think what I wanted to ask here was what you already talked about, because with action, you talk about the 4 yeses and how action and accountability tie into that. And are the 4 yeses are what we've talked about? Are they not? Can I count on you? Can I depend on you? Do I care about you? Do I trust you? And when we're acting in the right ways and we're taking the right actions and we're being accountable, I'm going to say yes to all 4 of those questions.
Yes. And I'm going to trust you. I'm not going to micromanage you. And when we come together next week, to your point, the who, what, why, or the who, what, when action list, when we say, well, Clint, how are you doing on this? If you say, well, actually, I haven't got started, then versus beating you up and saying, well, what the heck have you been doing all week? It's the what's got in the way of success, what's working, what's not. Okay, do you need more time? Did we set an unrealistic deadline? Do you need different resources? Do we need to transfer ownership because something else came up that was unexpected so that we can free you up to deal with that and somebody else is going to run with this project? But we don't. We just sit there with a hope that, well, maybe you'll fit it in next week. And now we're 2 weeks behind. So action and accountability is high trust. It's me doing what I said I was going to do and doing it in a way that brings people with me versus pushes them away. And also it has to be high trust that you're doing what you said you were going to do.
And you've used this word a number of times throughout our conversation, and it wasn't a step per se in the ally mindset. And at the same time, it had at least its own very large chapter and was referenced throughout the steps, and that's trust.
Oh, good. I was thinking, have I got to rewrite the book? Oh, trust, yes.
No. Yeah, trust was really, really front and center. And building it or destroying it one conversation at a time. So for our listeners, if you had to say what are 2 or 3 of the top things they can do to build and establish trust, what would you throw at them? Other than read The Speed of Trust, which is a great book on trust.
Yes, Stephen Covey. So I've put a quote, I was just trying to find it, but I put this in the book. It was one of those last minute inspirations where I woke up in the middle of the night. And trust, I said, I liken it to the WD-40 in teams. It's the lubricant that keeps us moving in the tough times. but it's also the duct tape that keeps us anchored together in the tough days. So if it's the WD-40 that keeps us moving on the sunny days, it's also the duct tape that keeps us together on the tough days. And trust is that nebulous thing. I mean, I'll often ask, I'll do the 4 yeses in a keynote, and I'll say to leaders, so what does it take to get to 4 yeses? I mean, if I was to join your team, what would I need to say or do to get to 4 yeses? And people say, well, do your job, prove it. Okay, so how long will that take? 2 years. And I'm going, well, hang on a minute. The pandemic didn't come at us with a slow crawl of 2 years. It came in like 24 hours. You get on an aeroplane and without knowing who the pilot is, you give implicit trust that they're going to get you to your destination in one piece. If you can give it to a complete stranger locked in the cockpit, why are you withholding trust from your colleague who you get to see every single day? Now, I'm not suggesting you give blind trust, but this goes back to abundance and generosity and connection and compassion and candor and debate. You give trust within guardrails, which is, Clint, tell me about your career. Okay, I need you to go and make red phones. Can you do that? Tell me what your first step will be. Oh, you've never done red phones. You've only made blue phones. Okay, let me coach you about how we do it at this company compared to the red phone company you worked at before. And when we can do that, it doesn't take 2 years to build a high trust. You can do it in weeks. You can do it in months. And it also means as you're building the trust bank account, when I do make a mistake, because let's face it, we're all going to do it, it doesn't result in that bank account going to zero or overdrawn. It's just a small withdrawal and quickly replace. So that's why trust is so important. But if you ask most people to describe it, it is too nebulous, which is why it's woven through the book. But hopefully with the 5 practices, those feel more concrete and tangible. But do those and do them consistently. And I guarantee you will be both trusting and trustworthy, because of all of these, there's 2 sides to that same coin.
Well, and now that you said it, that really jumped out at me, because one of the things I write about a fair amount and talk about is the idea that you start with trust. And and I think it was Shane Parrish, who I read had a very good, in his newsletter, Farnham Street, he talked about the fact that when you start with open trust versus you have to earn trust, there's no ceiling to life. Now, sure, you might get burned once or twice, but there's no ceiling to the opportunities, and it's an abundant mindset.
Ta-da! We come full circle, do you see? Yes.
I do, and that was the link, is because when you start from that place of closed trust and everybody's out to get me, that really is scarcity mindset defined.
Personified. And if you go looking for danger, you're going to find it. You're going to find it every corner. You're going to see Morag looked a bit shifty there. She looked away. She must be multitasking. And the thing is, if you don't stop and say, hey, Morag, looks like you're distracted. Do you need some time? Either that brings me back into the focus, and trust me, I'm not. That's why I keep my hands up often, so people know that I'm not secretly trying to do email. But we write stories that invariably are negative. So when we can start with abundance and generosity, when we can choose to give trust, even within guardrails, then we are going to be more pleasantly surprised. And if you drop the ball, then there's a coachable moment, both for me and you. Did I not articulate the needs clearly enough? No. Okay, well, then in that case, it's me. I own the fact that you dropped the ball, but now I need to set you up for success. And if I did articulate the needs clearly enough, then there was some additional coaching and feedback that you need and maybe did not feel able to ask for, which again comes back to me because something stopped you having the courage and vulnerability to have the candor and debate to ask for help. So this is all connected. As much as I present them as 5 linear things, it's the reason it's the pinwheel. Is right at the heart of that are the 4 yeses and the trust that we're talking about right now.
And when we do these 5 steps, we get to the 4 yeses, which means we are trusted. And at the end of the day, when you contrast that abundance versus scarcity, you may not get burned as much on that scarcity approach, but your life will be so much less enjoyable. I mean, it just feels like a very unpleasant way to live. And Morag, we've gone wide-ranging, worked our way through the full wheel. What if we left off that you want to make sure we get across to the listener today? Is there any final things that you want to throw at them that we didn't cover?
So cultivating winning relationships, cultivating your own ally mindset and behaviors. This is not a nice to do, it's a need to do. And I promise, much like you've just described, it will transform your life and your career. And it's just a daily habit. It's a in the moment habit. And every time you meet with a colleague, every time you step into a Zoom call or take a phone call, you have an opportunity to choose, how are you going to look up? What is needed? How do I need to make this person feel? How do I want to feel at the end of this call? To be intentional, how do you need to show up? Is it the talkative Morag or the quiet, reflective Morag? Whatever dimension you're looking at. And then step up is the how am I going to do it, and did I do my best? And if we keep asking ourselves those three questions, if we are diligent and thoughtful in the moment, we can but get better together. And that is the power of this. When you're successful, when I'm successful, then we are successful, and ultimately, #better together.
#better together. I love it. And so where can our listeners find you? I mean, we know they can go to the site that we're throwing in the show notes, SkyeTeam, SKYE team.cloud. Where else should they be looking?
All right. So skyeteam.cloud/you-me-we will take you to the Ally Mindset profile. SkyeTeam.com, which is getting a little gussied up between now and year end, is the main business website where you can learn more about our keynotes, our leadership programs, and our executive coaching and team coaching. And then finally, if in the meantime, youmewebook.com is where you can learn more about the book and pre-orders or order it from your favorite book retailer. As I've shared, I've got my copy today. Get yours ordered and help me spread the word so that we can be #better together.
Excellent. I love it. And we will get all of that in the show notes so that people can find it. Thank you for joining me today on the show.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks, Clint.
Thank you for joining us on The Pursuit of Learning. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and head over to our website, thepursuitoflearning.com, where you will find our show notes, transcripts, and more. If you like what you see, sign up for our mailing list. Until next time, your host in learning, Clint Murphy.